けど久しぶりにバイブス上げてこう嬉しそうできるスイカ
How's it going, y'all, and welcome to the 100th episode of the Castaway Anime podcast. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
And we've done it nearly 3 years later. We've hit the big 100, and 100 episodes later, it's all been leading to this exact moment. We've dropped hints all throughout the 100 episode run of the podcast. If you didn't pick up on it, that's on you. That's your fault.
It was a grand scale ARG, the likes of which have never been seen before. And in fact, our giant ARG, we did make it deaf friendly, despite it being a podcast. That was the only part of the podcast that was friendly to deaf people. So if you didn't pick up on it, must be blind, frankly.
Our medium that is almost exclusively can only be listened to people of hearing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, the deaf people could pick up on the ARG. I'm sure they were the only ones who got it. There's zero of them in our audience.
Our massively huge deaf demographic that listens to our
we
audio
also
only
put out the
show.
podcasts in Braille.
I wonder. I mean, obviously, that'd be a bitch and a half to actually do, but I wonder if any podcast out there has actually somehow created a Braille transcript of any of their episodes. I'd imagine none of them.
That would be interesting. But
Also, Braille is for the blind,
obviously
by the
would
way.
not work. Yeah, I've realized that like as soon as it came out of my mouth. But listen, it'd still be a suitable translation. We could get one of those translators who do sign language as the person speaking. It'll be the dedicated Castaway Anime translator.
See, that's
it'll
the
all
future. That's the future of streaming on Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that. That's the next evolution of VTubers. You got your normal VTuber, right? Your sexy anime girl, but then you have another sexy anime girl doing sign language in the corner, the opposite corner of where the big titty VTuber is.
Which one's sexier, the main guy or the translator?
There'll be camps, like there'll be rival fan camps of who people think is hotter.
Yeah, but we've gone wildly off topic already. A silent voice.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about A Silent Voice, the big 2016 anime film that was notoriously shunned by Your Name, because Your Name fever just took over Japan and the world. And then at the same time, this other movie was also beautiful that released around the same time came out, and it did garner attention. It's not like it was lost to the annals of history, but when you compare it to Your Name, it's kind of night and day.
I mean, it is night and day, but on the other hand, A Silent Voice is literally like one of the biggest anime films ever. What would be, like, I'm trying to think, what would be bigger than A Silent Voice and Your Name? Like, are there any that would beat them out? There's none that I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
Are you talking about anime movies in general, or anime movies that have come out since 2016?
Anime movies, in general, there'd be the Ghibli films, but
Yeah, I was gonna say.
other than that, if we're...
I mean, the Satoshi Kon films.
Satoshi, people know him, but I don't think that many people have actually watched them.
I mean, Perfect
Like,
Blue is
compared to A
pretty
Silent Voice,
iconic.
Perfect
I would definitely
Blue,
say-
yeah.
I would
Silent
say-
Voice is huge, though.
Also Akira, not Satoshi Kon, but Akira.
Okay, Akira probably.
I'm
Then
not.
maybe
I'm failing to see what point you're trying to make here.
The point is that it's massive, Neon. That's the point.
I was like, what are you like comparing it to? I could think of a bunch of anime movies that are just as big as it is.
Look, Your Name may have come out in the same year, but what I'm getting at is it didn't overshadow it that much. It's still huge. It's like one of the highest rated anything on Mal, which, to be fair, Mal scores take with a grain of salt. but it's still up there. It's still one of the most watched things on there. So, it's a phenomenon.
Yeah, notoriously both it and Your Name getting snubbed at the Oscars, not even nominated.
I don't know shit about the Oscars, especially in 2016, dude.
Just know that both of them lost a nomination to The Boss Baby.
I mean, can you really complain? The Boss Baby, I think it outclasses both of them.
I
frankly.
mean, true.
No,
but,
as the number
not
one
everyone
Boss
is
Baby
as
fan worldwide.
shares the most cultured taste as we do.
Look, the Boss Baby deserved that nomination.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I actually haven't seen it. But I can
I
I'm
saw
gonna
it
go
when I was like really young.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that it compared to Your Name and A Silent Voice, it didn't deserve it as much as those did.
Probably either of them. So I guess the point we're building towards here is A Silent Voice worth the hype? Is it as good as everyone says it is? Is it the 10 out of 10 Naoko Yamada masterpiece that the masses have lauded it as? On my first viewing back when I was a stupid, what would it have been, 15 or 16-year-old? One of those two ages. I was stupid during both of those times. I originally gave it a 7 because I was an insane person.
I was gonna say a fucking 7.
It should actually be a 5!
the big plot twist, you actually hated A Silent Voice this whole time.
Dude, A Silent Voice... You wanna know what I think about this movie? This should be shown in film classes the world round. That is what I think of this movie. Because every shot in this movie, I constantly screen capped every picture on screen. Like, I'd bet, like, more than half of the shots could be valid wallpapers.
I was gonna make a joke about, like, you remember, towards the, I don't know if you were online at the time, but, when Game of Thrones was ending, and, that shot of the dragon, like, setting fire to the Iron Throne, was like, oh, this should be taught in film classes. Like, that kind of post. I do that, but unironically for this movie too. I think it's one of the densest, most like studyable films I've ever seen. Like if I actually made videos, I would definitely want to make a silent voice analysis because there's so much to chew on.
I was literally picturing the video in my head as I watched it, obsessively analyzing every shot in A Silent Voice for, like, I don't know how long, probably an hour. Just some absurd length of time, because that's how long it would take to go, and here's why this shot is the best thing ever, and here's why the next shot after that somehow is even better than it. Dude, so many good shots. All of them. Like, even... I had to stop taking notes on the shots after a certain point because it was slowing me down too much. I was spending too much time writing down my little essays and like, oh, this shot is so good, that it was becoming a problem.
Yeah, I try to take notes for like some of the movies that we cover on here because my movie watching setup is different from my TV show watching setup. Because my computer is in front of me where I watch, TV shows, but my big TV where I play my games and my Blu-rays and 4K discs are behind me. So if I were to take notes on it, I'd have to turn my chair 180 degrees every time I needed to like pause the movie and take notes. I couldn't pause this movie.
I can't blame you. I paused it a lot to write my little essays until I went, actually, this is gonna take forever if I keep on doing this.
The only time I paused it, because I begrudgingly had to pause it, was I had to just go to work. I was watching. I didn't know the movie was gonna be 2 hours. I assumed it was just gonna be like, all right, it's probably gonna be like 100 minutes, because anime films don't tend to be 2 hours long, especially not something this beautiful. I was like, there's no way even the gods at Kyoto Anime couldn't make something this good for this length of time. So I just banked on it being like 100 minutes. And so I started watching it when I had like more than 100 minutes left of time before I had to leave for work. Looked at the runtime, looked at the time, like, fuck, I gotta pause it.
It was around the time when Shoko, during the middle school flashback, was literally framed within the playground equipment as if it were a cage, blocking herself out from the rest of the world. That I
Oh,
was like, man,
yeah.
I'm in good hands. I'm in such good hands right now. We're eating good.
The
Like, so many shots are evocative like that. I just love it.
there's so many like little moments that the film doesn't need to like dwell on, but you can just think about and be like, oh, that's clever. Like, oh, that's good.
What I like is that it can communicate a whole lot without needing to ever explain it. Like, okay, in an early scene, because I'm going through some of my notes right now because I just took so many of like the flashback sequence. Like there's one part where a girl is talking to her, and if it were a stupid movie, you'd be like, well, how does she know? But in this movie, she's like very subtly gesturing towards her mouth. And it's like not putting any emphasis on it, but because she's like kind of pointing towards it, your eyes are drawn to it, and you're like, oh, she can read lips. And then the movie doesn't need to explain that she can read lips, because like from that point forward, you just know it. Like, just tiny little things like that. I know that's not a big consequential, shot in the grand scheme of things, but, little things like that just permeate the movie.
Yeah, I part of me does wish that I took some notes so I could recount them all for the podcast. Because the only like real big one I'm thinking of is at the emotional climax of the movie that I don't want to get into just yet. But when it happened, I was like, oh, that's so good.
Real quick, are we doing like a spoiler free and then spoiler full section for this podcast? Or are we just going like raw dogging it?
We can raw dog. It's been 8 years since this movie's come out, and Your Name, so that's crazy to think about.
Yeah. Alright, I mean, that's what I expected, but just wanted to check. Dude,
Yeah,
like, it's hard to know where to begin and end with all the little cinematic gestures that this film makes. Like, one of, like, the most obvious one is the literal X's over everyone's face that blot them out, which is, used, like, it's not used all the time, but whenever it will have impact to have the X's be there, the, just random passersby even will be depicted with them over their faces. And it's a pretty consistent through line. Then at the end, when all of them peel off at once, dude, I could go on forever. You're gonna need to stop me.
yeah, like
You're
now
gonna need to, like,
watching
hold
that
me
scene,
back from
watching that
talking
scene,
about it.
I was just thinking to myself, man, Aka Akasaka owes Naoko Yamada so much money, so much credit for that move that he pulled in Love Is War.
Wait, what scene would that have been? It's been forever since I've seen.
Did you watch
either
season
of
2?
it. I did, but it was ages ago, and my
Do you remember
memory
the
is
Ishigami
terrible.
episode, aka the best
That's
episode?
what I thought it would have been at.
Yeah, well, except for having
that's where I
X's over
thought
their
it was,
faces,
but
they're
I
just
just wasn't
they just have
remembering it.
they're just drawn with no face, like you can't see their eyes.
Yeah, like, God, it's every shot. It's every shot. Just so many little moments. I could go through my screenshots folder because I took literally every shot that was remotely interesting to me. I screenshotted. Yeah, I mean, there's just a bunch of very subtle symbolism in the cinematography, and I'm not even sure how much of it would necessarily be intentional, but judging from how this movie is shot and directed, I'd be willing to guess that most of the things I picked up on were very deliberate. Like, fucking, this is a weird one that I picked up on. When Shoko is first being introduced to the class, and Shoya is messing with the mechanical pencil, it's like, she's making the introduction and then he clicks it while it's pointed at her and it's at like a Dutch angle, to me it almost feels like a warning shot or like a a harbinger of things to come, considering that he does just ruthlessly bully her pretty soon after. Like there's a bit of build up, but it eventually does get to that point. Just little things like that. And then even when it's not packed with symbolism, like the, playground cage or whatever, it's just fun. It's just good. Like, oh god, what was the Afro dude's name? I never really remembered it.
Nagatsuka.
Nagatsuka. A lot of the side characters, they have to make a really deep impression within a very short amount of time, because the movie is very fixated on the main two characters and giving them development. And granted, it doesn't do this well with every character, but with Nagatsuka, I was immediately on board with him. Like, as soon as... Alright, so the context of the conversation is that Shoya does not really understand friendship. He is at that point where he's just been so isolated from people for so long, been through all of middle school without really
it's not that he doesn't understand friendship, it's that he doesn't think he deserves it.
Well, yeah, that's also a big part of it for sure. But he's like, hey, what is friendship, my guy? And he's like what are the requirements?
Maybe it's fair to say he's forgotten what like real friendship is.
That's how I read it as, at the very least, that he's, because I've been in that position myself. Like I can relate, my guy.
Wow, Crunchy, you bullied deaf girls when you were a child.
You know what? There was like a bunch of them at my school. I just kicked them all into the dirt every day. That was like my morning routine. That's what got my blood pumping.
The way you started that sentence actually sounded genuine. So I thought you were gonna be like, actually, there was like this one girl with a disability at my school that I was kind of mean to. I thought you were gonna get real for a second.
No, but what I relate to is like literally being so isolated for so long that like at one point you could talk to people and now you literally have forgotten. And so that's how I read it as, anyway. But Nagatsuka is like, listen, man, he grabs the French fry, dabs some ketchup on it, and uses it as a cigarette, which made me burst out laughing, because it's so characterizing. Like, Nagatsuka's just this nice, awkward, silly guy.
Changes the way that he talks to be like a kind of like a mobster, and like hey man, that's the friends do, like you got my back, I got yours. He like pretends to take drags of the French fry ketchup cigarette.
Dude, it's just so full of life. Like every part of this movie looks gorgeous and has so much soul put into it. Literally, when Shoya tells Nagatsuka, hey, like Shoko's brother, quote unquote, she's actually her sister. Or actually, well, at first they were under the impression that it was her boyfriend. But then it's like, no, it's actually her sister. Nagatsuka's like, yeah, I knew that, and then takes his hand off, and it's like smash cuts to him across the street. It's so good. Like, everything about the way that was directed, that made me laugh. Just small things like that. Like, it's not a really funny movie overall, but when it tries to tell a legitimate joke, it is funny. Like, it always works out.
I love the little gag of a user when Shoko confesses to Shoya, but Shoya doesn't understand it because of the way Shoko talks, and he misinterprets it as Suki as like Suki as in the moon. I watched the movie dub, by the way, but I just know a little Japanese, and I remember this joke from the trailers. When he then tells it to Yuzuru, and because he's like, oh man, I think I upset Shoko because she tried to tell me something, but I don't think I got it right, and I think I upset her. And then Yuzuru asks, what did you think she said? And he says, oh, I think she said the moon. And she just, the little cut of her smiling and laughing to herself and trying to hold it in.
She's like, yeah, I bet that would piss her off.
Yeah. And then that joke is then kind of expanded on, not in that particular moment, but the moment right before it when Shoko was telling Yuzuru that she told Shoya that she liked him, but he didn't understand it, and she's cutely kicking her feet on her bed. There's another moment later in the movie where after she gets a text from Shoya to want to hang out together, she's kicking her feet again, and we never see her face. Just her Yuzuru looks over the curtains to her room, and she just sees her kicking her feet, and she's like, she must be in a good mood.
Listen, you know how Naoko Yamada is with fucking people's legs emoting for them. But in this case, like, the kicking legs, it's just so adorable. I love it. Once again, it's every shot, man. It's all of them. There's one part where Shoya and Shoko are, they're hanging out together, and they go to, like, this really, like, I don't even know what it would be, like some kind of park or museum or something. It just has these really weird
I think it was like an
bits
art
of architecture. Yeah, that's what I think. They just look so ornately rendered. Like, you have to know the people at Kyoto Anime literally went to a place like this and used it as inspiration to, or probably even as direct
I am
references
100%
for
confident that place is
backgrounds.
real. It's in real life.
Shit's as real as the K-On! School, where they raised all the white nationalists, presumably. Or I guess the Asian nationalists.
I keep forgetting that Naoko Yamada directed K-On!, Free, and Tamako Love Market and Love Story.
I didn't know about Free, actually. I knew about the other two, but not Free.
I think she directed Free. Let me double check. I don't want to be spreading misinformation. Okay, no, she was a key animator on Free. She directed both seasons of K-On!, Tamako Market, Tamako Love Story, the Heike Story, which I remember you famously did not enjoy that much, even though I think that is a lost episode of Castaway Anime.
Yeah, I think that has been lost to time. Though, to be fair, my opinions may have changed now. If I rewatched it, I don't know, I'm indecisive.
Yeah, Liz and the Bluebird, and the upcoming Colors Within, which now that I've seen this movie, I'm doubly excited for.
Oh, same thought here. Like, I am so down for it.
I'm pretty sure G-Kids is bringing it over this year.
Like, dude, the shot near the end with Shoya looking at his reflections on the ground, where it's like, the conversation is first shown through that, and everyone else is looking ahead, he's looking down. God, like, yeah, I'm going through my screenshots folder. I am picking them all out. We could be here all day. Really.
Yeah, I know it's jumping ahead a little, but I think my favorite bit of, like, visual storytelling in this movie, or just use of themes, is when, at the beginning of the movie, Shoko, as the nice little angel that she is, just wants to be friends with Shoya, even though Shoya's been nothing but a dick to her. Does the little, point to myself, point to yourself, clasp our hands together, which is, I'm pretty sure, sign for "Can we be friends?" And then, when at the very end of the movie, where Shoya and Shoko are on the bridge and they're opening up their emotions to each other, when Shoya places his hands onto Shoko when she's crying, saying it's all her fault and that she knows that she's such a burden, and he's comforting her, saying, "No, you're not a burden. You're like the most wonderful person in my life, and I want you to teach me how to live." And when he takes his hands off hers, he's had them put together in the clasp of "Can we be friends?" without actually having to say it. And I was like, ooh, ooh.
No, like, even before that, because the reason why we knew that is because he literally, like, makes the sign language, and then, like this is near the beginning of the movie when he meets back with Shoko for the first time. He, like, turns around blushing and is like, "Oh my god, that's what that meant. Holy shit."
Yeah, the way the movie is structured also is fucking genius.
It's because the source material is a manga. And so the movie feels like it stretches over a pretty significant, well, not not too crazy a span of time, but a pretty long time, and you can definitely feel you can feel that it is a manga, sometimes for the worse in very specific instances, but I mostly think it does a really good job of like stringing together what you can obviously tell would be like individual chapters, like, okay, this is the story for, this part of it, and like this leg, and you can, at times feel where they would have ended, but because of the way, like, the directing and, script is so strong that, like, manages to feel like this pudding of drama and emotions and whatnot.
Yeah, I think as a film, this is an excellent adaptation of the Silent Voice manga, which I'm definitely going to be picking up because it's only 7 volumes, I found out. And that's like you can crank that out in 2 days, one day if you really felt like it. I just have to constantly grapple with the fact that I'm out of space on my shelves for manga. I can't fit anymore.
Yeah, so this is actually an interesting time to bring this up. Have you heard the common take from people who have read the Silent Voice manga? That the manga is much better, according to them.
I was curious after I finished the movie, being like, okay, that was fucking phenomenal. What do fans think aside from the hardcore fans, the Silent Voice manga bros? And they're like, oh yeah, it's a good film. It's just that the manga's better because it covers more, which is understandable. It's 7 volumes, and this is a 2-hour movie. Something was gonna get left on the cutting room floor. I think for what it is, like, if you had told me that this was a completely original work, not based on anything, I would still say it was a phenomenal job of a movie. Uh, I've heard that the big criticism that people have of the movie is that the side characters do get truncated a little when they were more fleshed out in the manga, which is to be expected.
I agree with that to an extent. So Nagatsukai was completely behind. Ueno, her redemption is a little underdeveloped, but overall, like, I enjoyed her. I think, they did fine with her. Sahara, I like. But two of the others, I think it's Kawai and then a guy who I assumed was her boyfriend, but
Yes.
cannot remember the name, his
Alright,
name
so
for the life of
well,
me.
this is interesting because I watched this movie dubbed, so I'm remembered aside from Nagatsuka, I remember all the characters by their first names, which is it's actually really weird because I think Shoya exclusively refers to Nagatsuka by his last name, but then he refers to Kawaii and her boyfriend by their first names, Miki and Satoshi, and also Ueno by her first name, Naoka.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but I do gotta come down on 11 Art Studio and Shout Factory for how they set up the Blu-ray, the home release of the movie. Why the fuck did you not put subtitles up for when there was Japanese writing on screen?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
the way they
wait,
have it
hold on.
set up.
With her notebook? Wait, did
Yeah.
they? What? Wait, they
So
they didn't
he-
put subtitles for that?
okay, here's how it's broken down. So there's 2 audio tracks, the English dub and the original Japanese dub. And then there's 3 subtitle options, which are either off completely, English translation. No, not English translation. English original like Japanese, and then the English like the localized dub script that they just turn into subtitles with additional stuff like the music is playing now, upbeat music, the sound effect happens. So by default, on the English dub, no subtitles options, there are no subtitles for written Japanese characters like her notebook, which is massively distracting and takes away from the movie if you can't read it or understand it. So I was like, well, shit, I guess I'll have to put on subtitles then. But you can't put on subtitles for the book without putting on subtitles for the rest of the movie. And you can't do that with the English translating from the original Japanese and not the localized one because you're gonna read a different set of words than what the characters are actually saying. So I had to put on the SDH, audio visual descriptors, which was not less than ideal.
That sounds turbo giga stupid.
It
Why
is
would
very
they do it like
stupid.
that?
I don't know. I think that's the only time I've ever
Because-
watched a dubbed anime movie at home and ran into that problem. Because usually what you do is you have the dub track, and then in there you have a captions track, but you only play it for when you have Japanese characters on screen that are worth translating. Like if someone's writing Japanese in a book and you just need to have it visible for the characters.
like what she writes in the notebook is deeply important. Like because the notebook itself, God, this is another part I like where okay, so the through line of Shoya's bullying of Shoko is that he will do things that he like because he's a very self-centered kid who lives only for his own amusement. He doesn't really get the weight of the various things he's doing to her, and he doesn't realize the importance of the objects he messes with. And so one of my favorite moments from that stretch of the movie is when he tosses Shoko's notebook into like a little, I don't know how to describe it, just this little bit of water near the school. And like all his friends including him are surprised when she goes into the water to fetch the notebook because it's just a fucking notebook, like why even bother. But to her it's like this extremely important thing, her only tether to be able to interact with the outside world on a verbal level for the most part, because she can't really speak that well, and so people don't understand her. And although she can read lips, you can't always catch that on the fly. And so having people write them down in a notebook is important. And so her going to fetch that notebook is like this really powerful moment, I feel. And you don't really get as much of that if you can't understand what's written in it.
Yeah, it is a big annoying fuck up on their end, but going back to that whole thing with when they were children, uh, excellent across the board of just how they presented it. When it's a nice balance of okay, we want to make you understand like why Shoya was such a it was such a little prick, but it was also genius of them to open the film with him as an adult and then thinking about like okay, so yeah, the movie opens up with him he's going to walk to the bridge. He wants to kill himself. He's already like got all his affairs in order. He's quit his job. He's closed out his bank account. He's withdrawn all his money. He's written a note to his mom that he leaves on her bed while she's sleeping with all of her with all the money that he was going to give her. And then he's walking to the bridge and he's thinking about jumping. But then he doesn't. And he's like, you know what? Like, no, like he can't bring himself to do it. As much as he hates himself and everything that he's done, he cannot go through with the act of offing himself. And then the scene, like, there's so many great scenes in this movie that's like it's like reaching your hand into a bag of like Halloween candy, just pulling out nothing but bangers. Like even the little scene where his having breakfast with his mom, and at first, like I was kind of taken aback by how casually she brings up, "Hey, honey, why did you want to kill yourself?" Like, and she says this after like she finds the note, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy and grateful to have such a loving son who cares about me and is willing to give me all of this money." But then she flips the script by saying, "Hey, why do you want to kill yourself? Like, what's up with that, son?" And then when he's like, "Oh, I kind of thought about it, but not. I don't think I can anymore." But then she's not having it because that's her son, and he's like, she was probably like scared shitless when she woke up that day and her son wasn't home, and she was thinking, "Oh shit, my son's probably fucking dead." But then when he's like trying to play it off and she gets all serious, she takes a little candle lighter and is threatening to set all of the money on fire as until she makes Shoya like say and promise her that he'll never kill himself. And like he does genuinely mean it. And then like when she's relieved and she's like, "Oh, good. I guess I won't burn your money after all." She lights the money on fire by accident anyway. And it does confirmed gets destroyed. 1.7 million yen, which I looked up, was translates to about like a little more than $10,000. Just
God
gone.
damn.
Yeah. Imagine
Yeah.
you were gonna give someone $10,000 and then like, oopsie poopsie.
Yeah, and I've actually, because I've read some of the mal reviews for this movie, like, way back after I finished it, I've seen some complaints about, like, oh, the mom reacted, you know, in the wrong way to the suicide, and, like, there's never any, you know, follow-up on that, of, like, the right way to react to it, or whatever, that she's, like, overly blaming him, I guess. Counterpoint, wouldn't you be freaked the fuck out and yelling your head off if you found out your son was gonna kill himself? Or attempted to, and only isn't dead because he decided not to at, like, the last moment? I can't really blame her for the way she acts. And I think it hits harder when she's, like, just, you know, saying, "Listen, I'll burn this fucking money. Like, don't do this. You gotta promise me, man."
Yeah,
I like that
I thought
scene
it was
a
like
lot.
very emotionally powerful right off the gate to be like, "Hey, all this hard, you were only like working this hard and giving me all this money because you just wanted to leave me something before you die. Yeah, I will literally turn all of that effort to waste if you do it. So, you gotta promise me you won't, bud." And then I love even like little moments like when she does burn it, but then she says, "Hey, I'm sorry that I did accidentally burn all your money, but then again, you were only going to give it to me because you were going to kill yourself, so I kind of don't want it either way. So I guess this is for the best."
Yeah, I liked that. Just everything about it is so good.
Bro, the mom is such
But
a good character. For how little she's actually in the movie, like every time she shows up, she's like kind of like amazing.
their family, like, a lot of the character designs in this movie are, like, really unique.
Yeah,
Like,
she
not,
she
you know,
dyes
crazy
her
over the
hair.
top.
Yeah,
'Cause
she
she's a
dyes her hair
hairstylist,
blonde.
so she's got
Yeah,
weird hair.
yeah, she blondes it, but then she has black roots because Shoya's hair is black, so you would see the black at her roots.
Dude, and, like, Shoya's, the tag on his shirt is always flipped up and out. I don't know why, but it's cool and I love it. And also,
I think
Shoya
it's just
has
a
the
little.
coolest. Oh, go on.
I think it was just a little fashion detail, but he has the coolest what?
He has the coolest silhouette ever. Like, he's so tall and gangly and lanky, and then got that spiky hair. He just looks badass.
You know what he reminds me of? And not to say that I dislike Subaru's character design from ReZero, but he reminds me of a cool Subaru.
You know what? He's Subaru if he had swag, if he had riz,
If he had
as the
Riz.
kids would say. Subaru, but the Rizzler.
Yeah, all the character designs are so great. I love how they did actually got me with Yuzuru for a bit when I didn't believe that she was the boyfriend. I thought she was just her little brother, but they did actually get me with the gender ambiguity of her.
Well, good thing you were watching the dub, because granted I've seen the movie before, but even still, it's so clearly a female voice actor that I was like, that's not a boy. I mean,
yeah,
I remember that she's a girl, but that ain't a fucking boy.
Yeah, the was Kristen Sullivan did a very good young boy voice.
Yeah, also, this is something really subtle that I noticed. Shoya Ishida and Shoko Nishimiya's names mirror each other. Like, they have two of the same syllables and are just changing them in little ways. I like that, especially because it plays into the larger theme of Shoko and Shoya just generally mirroring each other and, in a very subtle way, going through similar experiences. And it's through going through both of those experiences that they come to a greater understanding of each other by the end, and an understanding of what they need to do to move forward. So just like little things like that. There's so, dude. I already want to rewatch this movie. It's
I
been
kind
a
of
day
want to also.
because there's so much I definitely didn't catch.
Yeah, like I think I could be wrong about this. Maybe this is me just reading into the movie, but I kind of feel like one of the reasons that Shoya bullies Shoko is because of this one line of dialogue right after Shoko's introduction to the class where they find out her first name is Shoko, and they're like, "Oh, we have another show in class. Isn't that cool, Shoya?" And when you're a kid, you want everything to be, unique to you. It's all, especially, and if you're already kind of like a bratty, doesn't care about other people type of kid like Shoya is. So I wonder if one of the reasons that he bullied Shoko is because, hey, you can't have my nickname. You can't be related to me in any way, shape, or form. I gotta make you a like my new plaything. And everyone's gotta be in on the joke.
And actually, on that note, this movie does a lot without saying a whole lot. Like the opening credits sequence with the insert song. All right, so imagine this: you're a silent voice. You've got all these, very chilled out, beautiful, pretty songs in the background. But then the opening song to the movie, not the very opening, because we get the scene of him trying to kill himself first, but directly after that, you get like this almost rockish song.
It's My
with
Generation
sung
by The
vocals.
Who, and it's fucking
My
awesome.
Generation. It is a good song, but also it's like the fact that it contrasts so heavily with everything else in the movie in terms of the song is the point, and so immediately gets you into the head of Shoya as a kid. Like that montage as well of them just fucking around, doing whatever as kids, especially just walking with swagger, like the
Yeah,
wide
literally,
steps
I was
he
about to
takes.
say, every time I listen
like
to
the-
that song again, I'm only gonna be thinking of Shoya walking with the exaggerated swagger.
Yeah, and like the kid with the flag in the background waving high, like, yeah, this is my gang, my posse. And he's
This is, in
he's
fact,
at
my
the front of it all.
generation.
My generation to bully deaf people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah, contrasting that with the oh yeah, I was just about to kill myself as a high school teenager, and my mom just had this like big moment with me, like, hey, don't kill yourself or I'll be really cross with you, Sonny. And then just contrasting that with the talking about my generation, just him, strutting around town, strutting his stuff as a child, hanging out with his delinquent friends, just causing trouble, tearing up the local scene. Oh, it's such a good tone setter.
yeah, dude. Once again, like I've just realized we've been talking for like nearly 40 or 50 minutes total about the movie, and we've like barely even delved into the plot. We're like just setting the scene because there's so many details. There's so much to cover. Uh, yeah, like
I
do
feel
we
like
even
the way we're
go?
talking about it right now, we can just intertwine themes with the plot, because oh, well, here I'll take care of this. So one setup in the movie, in the flashback sequence when they're children, when it's a good balancing act of getting you in the headspace of where he was at a child, but then framing it being like, okay, so like here's this kid, like if they set it up in the opposite way where they had the flashback first and then the kid grew up and was going to kill himself, you wouldn't have as much sympathy for him, because you're like, okay, well, you kind of deserve this a little bit because you relentlessly picked on a helpless deaf girl and destroyed her hearing aids, the thing that she needs to hear. So, yeah, go ahead. You probably should jump off that bridge, Shoya. But by framing it as, okay, so here's a guy who is sad, depressed, thinking about killing himself, doesn't, has a big emotional thing with his mom. Then we go to his flashback and we get an understanding of why it is. Like, you're still, you get upset with young Shoya and you just want him to not bully this cute little deaf girl. But then you also then see, and it also builds upon how he kind of gets fucked over by his classmates, whereas he is definitely like deserves the shit that he gets, but not to the point like it's this interesting moral gray area. And as you know me, I love interesting moral gray areas of where definitely he is, and he reiterates this a couple times throughout the movie. Even when he grows up and he understands that what he did was fucked up, he was definitely not the only one who was bullying Shoko. Like, Naoka was also bullying her. And then there are also kids like Miki and, I forget the white-haired kid's name. Kisuke? Is that right? Kazuki?
Maybe I literally couldn't tell you.
I think it's, I want to say Kazuki. So when after all the bullying and like, and even with one girl like Miyoko, who was the first person who genuinely tried to be a friend with Shoko, but Naoka was like, ooh, I don't want Shoko to have like any like friends at all. I don't want her to be happy, so I'm going to bully Miyoko. And they cause her like someone who was previously not in like the crosshairs of bullies or like the target of any ridicule, but because you associated with someone who is, now you now have painted the target on your own back. Like literally exactly what happened in Sangatsu with the bullying arc. And oh my god, how am I blanking on her name? It's not Momo, because that's the little girl. What was brown haired girl's
Hinata?
name? Hinata, yeah.
Hina. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Hina, that's right. Yeah, literally exactly what happened with Hina. So she ended up having to transfer to a different school because of that, because she was almost exactly like Sangatsu again. So then that leaves Shoko all alone. And then when it finally comes to a head, where it's brought into the attention of the staff and of the school, and the teacher character who knows that Shoya is a troublemaker and knows that she's like actively been bullying her in class, and then like even when the principal at first is like, okay, well, Shoko's bully, like, please come forward, like this is a serious thing. Shoya doesn't say anything because he obviously he like, when you're a bully you don't want to own up to it, and then because everyone knows that like he was like the big perpetrator, he was like the biggest bully of them all to Shoko, but they all were at least either also participated in or at the very least complicit with it and didn't do anything about it. Some of them even sat by and they were kind of reveled in it a bit, like laughing alongside, like Miki did with Naoka and Kazuki did with Shoya. So then when the teacher, who knows all of Shoya's wrongdoings, is like, listen, Shoya, we all know it's you. Stand the fuck up right now. Like, slams his fist against the chalkboard to scare him. And then the moment, like, this moment is like social Darwinism, where everyone is like, yeah, Shoya was kind of going like too hard in the paint on Shoko, and everyone's throwing him under the bus when they were well, not as guilty, definitely complicit with her bullying. And then like even Miki, when I was like, you little bitch, where she is like, yeah, like how, where the show is like, Miki, you, like, when Naoka was bullying her, you were like laughing alongside her, you didn't do anything to help Shoko. And then Miki's crying like, how could you say something like that? I would never bully a deaf girl or even laugh at a deaf girl being bullied. How could you say that? And like doing that just to save herself from being blamed or getting in any trouble. and all her, even Shoya's friends throw him under the bus.
Yeah, it's this. I mean, I'll go back first to what you said about like them showing the attempted suicide first. Like the flashback would be just kind of painful to watch by comparison if they didn't show the context for it. Because the question would be like, okay, well, why am I watching this child get bullied? But with that context, you're like, okay, I get what it's building up to. I'm picking up what you're putting down. And yeah, this movie thematically is about two things, guilt and redemption. And it is like the guilt and redemption story, along with, funnily enough, you want to know what this reminds me of most of all? Onani Master Kurosawa, which, if you don't know the English translation for that title, is a Master of Masturbation Kurosawa. And by the way, that manga is unironically a 10 out of 10.
I have not read it, but
one
I
of
have
my favorite
heard
stories
it is Kino.
ever.
I've also heard that.
Good.
I have also genuinely heard that, like, yo, dude, though, ignore the title. It's actually like a masterpiece.
It's genuinely a 10. I've read it twice and I've given it a 10 each time. It's so good. And it is also about guilt and redemption. And just, because guilt is like one of the most horrible feelings in the world if you like truly internalize it. And this movie is very much about that, of like Shoyo literally killing himself. Well, not killing himself, but wanting to kill himself. Sort of misspoke there. But, because it's one thing to acknowledge wrongdoing, but it's another thing entirely to say, okay, I'm guilty for this, therefore I am a bad person, therefore there is nothing I could ever do to repay this, therefore I'm better off dead, frankly. And I feel like, everyone at some point in their lives will go through something kind of like this. Not necessarily to the extent that Shoya does, because he, relentlessly bullied a deaf girl for presumed months on end.
Personally, I can't relate. I exclusively bullied blind girls at my school.
Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
How can they get mad when they'll never know that I was the one? They'll never see that I did it.
Well, there you go. But on a smaller scale, everyone understands that feeling, or at least most people past a certain age can relate to it, which is probably part of why it's such a popular story, because it's something that everyone just innately gets. Because it's like, yeah, of course he wants to kill himself after that. Like, I understand. I too am not a sociopath. I too can relate to feeling guilty. That, and also, not sure if you share this feeling, but this is like, okay, so there's some stories that I watch and I just get the sense of like, man, this is a classic. This is a story that just in conception is just an absolute classic that everyone should see. That like speaks so resonantly to this one topic that it like hit the nail on the head. I don't know, it's kind of a vague feeling that I'm describing. But this feels like such a classic story. I guess like it's just a story that makes so much sense conceptually that it's like, yeah, of course we need that story in the world. Of course the story about the guy bullying the deaf girl and then feeling guilty about it, and then they're like arcs weirdly mirror each other.
I'm smelling what you're stepping in, and I do agree. I feel like the story is like pretty much timeless. Like we'll always need this kind of story in the world, and how you know me, I am very pro humanity, pro like let good people do good things, and I want to see everyone wants to see good people succeed, but there's also the stories of redemption, and seeing Shoya get his redemption, because like you know how great this how like horrible this movie would be if Shoya, if it didn't take steps to like show that Shoya genuinely like understands what he put Shoko through, and it was like, oh, like he just like decided on a whim to just want to like make it up to Shoko, or like or rather like imagine a version of the story where he doesn't get bullied throughout middle school, and like Shoko just leaves and he continues to be the same prick, and he just like but then like a trashy version where Shoko comes back, like he encounters Shoko in high school, but then he's like, oh wow, she's like really cute in now, and I'm like kind of falling in love with her, but how could I, fall in love with the girl that I bullied before?
Oh. Dude, I didn't know where you were going with that for a while, but then as soon as I heard, man, Shoko's kind of cute, I understood exactly what kind of story.
Tell me
you're
you can't
about.
imagine like a shitty hack author making a like a manga or a light novel about that, and then that getting a shitty anime adaptation that we cover on the seasonal cast.
Dude,
Tell me you can't so perfectly
it
picture
sounds
that in
like
your
a
head.
seasonal anime. God, that was perfect. But something interesting about A Silent Voice 2. I feel like it would be good in almost any medium. Like, the manga version of this is probably Kino. The novel version of it would be Kino if it existed. Maybe it does. I don't know. I just like reading. But it's just such a, like you said, timeless story that it's like, I feel like any way you tell it, it would be good. Of course, I like that Naoko Yamada's directing and cinematography and all that stuff and the work of the animators. I like that all of that is there, and it definitely enhances the story. But it's also just such a good story. Like, it's a story, once again, that you hear conceptually and go, that's the best thing ever. Whereas, other stories like, the actual plot might not sound that good on paper, but it's through finessing it that it becomes great. But this story is just like, it's just the sales pitch writes itself. It's such a good idea.
Yeah, you get such a feel for like empathizing with Shoya when you find out like, oh yeah, he did bully Shoko and he does deserve some shit for that, but then like it's like this once again the interesting moral gray area of all the other kids throw him under the bus as the sole only person who bullied her. No one else was guilty at all. They all washed their hands clean of it when they had a little bit of dirt on their hands, and they were complicit. And so, in order to save themselves, they threw him under the bus. And as a result, he becomes the kid who gets bullied in school the most. So, like, he was bullied all throughout the rest of elementary school, bullied all throughout middle school, and then when he got to high school, they stopped like actively bullying him. But then like this like feeling of like the news of him, like that's the guy who bullied a deaf girl when he was younger. So he just like internalized with himself, okay, I can't like deal with people anymore because now like through my formative years I've just been taught to think that I am not worth being around, and I am just a troublemaker and a bad person. So he's internalizing that in himself to the point where he can't even look people in the eye anymore. He goes from like from extrovert to introvert to the point where he now just imagines. Well, it's not literally imagining. It's the film's way of saying like he can't look people in the eye, and he like tunes out their conversations because when he doesn't tune them out, he just hears all the negative things about him. So, in the film's way of telling us this is by putting X's over everyone, even the people that he like is going to befriend, or even that he used to know, like Naoka. Get the X's over her face. When he first meets Nagatsuka, he has an X over his face, and only the X falls off when he like feels like he's genuinely able to look him in the eye and call him a friend.
Dude, you just reminded me of like a really clever moment where it's like early on in the film, he's like, just got his head on his desk and he's, just kind of glancing at people talking about him, and he's literally reading their lips. Like, he knows how to do that now. Like, literally, because they're too far away for him to hear, but he sees what they're mouthing and says it in his head. Dude, that was so good. Like, that was peak.
And then,
but yeah, like,
you also understand that he, like, you do empathize with him a little when we never have to have him like verbally say this out loud, aside from like one brief line of dialogue mentioning it, just as pomp and circumstance. But when he meets Shoko again and he's able to sign language to her, yeah, we find out that like yeah, sometime between like after he started getting bullied when she left and transferred schools and to now, he wanted to genuinely make amends with Shoko. And in order to do so, he learned sign language to be able to communicate with her should the time ever come.
Yeah, like, it's going back to that idea of their arcs mirroring each other. Of like, he literally goes through what she went through and now knows how it felt. And he now lives with not only the guilt, but also the social isolation that comes with bullying. And it's just, like, he's such a sympathetic character despite what he did, and you immediately want to root for him. Like, he's just such a good protagonist for this film.
Yeah, and once again, framing the suicide attempt first, and the scene with his mom before the flashback sequence lends itself to like you want to see him get better. You understand like why he's now in the position that he's in, instead of being like, well, you get what you reap what you sow, kid. But like now that you see like, okay, yeah, what he did was fucked, but what happened to him was also kind of fucked itself. So he does need to be he needs to go through an arc to get his redemption, but like he deserves a bit of a redemption. It's not like some bitches in this movie of the female variety who don't deserve anything but belonging to the streets.
Oh god. Sexist Neon showing his true colors, ayo?
No, Shoko deserves the world. Naoka deserves 5 across the face.
Which one was Naoko again? Last name. I don't know first names. Ueno. Okay, now I get you.
She gets off incredibly easy in this movie.
Yeah, and this feels like something that would be expanded on a lot in the manga, and that's kind of the death knell of the movie. Well, not really a death knell, but the one thing holding it back from a 10 in my eyes. Spoiler alert, it's not a 10, unfortunately. Like that killed me inside when I realized it myself.
I also wanted to give the movie a 10, but there were just a couple little things that held it back from it, and it's at a 9. But I will say I'm very confident that like every time I rewatch it, it'll never threaten to fall below a 9. It'll always be an amazing film.
Same. Because there are, like you said, a few issues, and one of them, Ueno, her redemption, well, first of all, okay, so Ueno, her thing is that, and she's such a conceptually interesting character to me, because she's Shoya if he didn't regret his actions, where she, first of all, walked away scot-free from bullying her and being the second largest instigator, arguably. At the very least, among the top instigators. And so she, was always there, making fun of her and whatnot. And, used Shoya as a scapegoat. And then once we get back, she harbors this grudge against Shoko still. And on the one hand, like, she's so interesting to think about, because she's in this, like,
so interesting to think about how I want to jam her head onto a railroad pike.
I did think about that. Maybe not that exact scene, but like when she's saying, hey, like, without Shoko, everything would be fine. Like, completely missing the entire point that she should be getting. Just letting it fly miles above her head. Like, yeah, there are moments where you're like, Jesus Christ, Ueno. When she grabs Shoko's hearing aids and goes like, yeah, let's just throw it around for old time's sake.
I wanted to strangle her when she did that.
Same.
Like
she's in this...
Also, once again, a great callback to the flashback where one of the ways that they bullied her was Naoka pretended to take an interest in her hearing aids, be like, whoa, can you talk, like, do you use those to hear, Shoko? Can I see them real quick? And cute innocent Shoko's like, oh yeah, sure, here you go. Takes yeah, and then Shoya's like, yo, what you got there, Naoka? Pass him over. And she's like, okay, here, catch. And then like, he takes the goes, ew, gross, earwax, throws him out the window, breaks him. Like then calling back to her, she's the one who then rips the hearing aid out of her ear and be like, huh, there's only one this time. Hey, yeah, Shoya, let's like toss around the old hearing aid pigskin for old time's sake. But then she's kind of upset to see that Shoya's changed and be like, no, that's really fucked up. Give those back, please. I'm really sorry about that, Shoko, my dear.
And the thing about Ueno is that I don't think she's just like a massive psychopath or whatever. Like, that's not the point they're getting at. The idea is that she's Shoya if he never grew up. Because she's still in his initial mindset of, I live to have fun, and I don't really think about other people's pain or how I'm affecting them. I'm just doing whatever, and I'm a massive prick. And then, like, there's also this through line where whenever, old Shoya and, Ueno still, like, when Shoko's nice to them, they get angry because they want to justify what they're doing, but they can't because Shoko is just too much of a kind soul, will not stand up for herself unless absolutely pushed to, and will not fight back, will only respond with kindness. And so there's this through line of like, oh well, I can't hate them, and Ueno is also struggling with coming to terms with that throughout the film, where she feels this anger toward this very undeserved anger towards Shoko. Because, if Shoko was never there, things would be okay, it'd be just like old times. And so she eventually confronts her on a Ferris wheel and is like, hey yo, bitch, I hate you, fuck you, and then slaps her in the face. I'm abridging the conversation a little, but that's basically the gist of it. And
it's not the only time he slaps her in the face.
Yeah. And so, like, on the one hand, like, I so get what they're putting down. I so understand it on a conceptual level, because there are some people who just never grow up, who are just assholes and never, like, learn to take into account other people's pain. And she's someone who went into high school and has continued to be like that. And so it's this idea of, okay, how do we make someone like that grow up and become a well-rounded person? The problem is, we don't have the runtime for that. Maybe we do, but we did not spend it on that. And so it feels really underplayed. Like, Shoko just... Here's the worst part about it. Here's the worst part about it to me. And it's the only time that I think the movie threatened to have a bad message behind it. Which is when Shoko, like, just kind of stands outside the hospital every day with an umbrella to make amends with Ueno. Like, Ayo, well, she has an umbrella in one shot when it's raining. But she's like, Ayo, Ueno. Well, she doesn't even say anything. Ueno just walks past her in silence. And then eventually, she gets to the point where she learns how to say baka in sign language. And she is redeemed. Not very satisfying, and also she's
there
been
needed
nothing
to be
but
at least
to Shoko.
There needed to be at least one scene where she just like gets a actual talking to, gets brought down to earth. That one scene of her after Shoya gets injured, saving Shoko from killing herself, and then she's blaming Shoko again for it, getting physical with her for a second time, with smacking her, throwing her to the ground. Berating her once again, and then when based Shoko's mom comes out and smacks her multiple times and gets into an altercation with her, I was like, yes, do it, kick her fucking ass, Shoko's mom. But then there's never a point where like Shoya nor like Yuzuru, like if anything, Yuzuru should have been the one to like go off on Naoka. I think that would have been like the best person, like someone who like Naoko couldn't possibly get physical with, otherwise like she'd be just like even worse of a person. Like how are you gonna hit a child as an adult? Like use being a family member, and just going off on how much of a bitch she is because she saw everything and she recorded the conversation they had on the Ferris wheel. Where do you get off?
See, I like like conceptually the idea of there being a scene of Shoko every day outside the hospital waiting for Ueno to turn around is a powerful image. It's just a misplaced powerful image. Ueno, like, okay, what I dislike about it is that Ueno, like, okay, there comes a point in life where someone is so much of a prick to you that you literally, like, should not try to make amends with them. You should not try to be their friends. There is a time when someone is so relentlessly mean to you that you should just stay away from them. Or say, hey, you're a cunt, and then stay away from them. Preferably the latter in certain instances. But, you know, this scene could have been good if we had gotten the beginning of that turning point. If we had gotten that sort of reconciliation of Ueno, you know, maybe it could be that Ueno's like, hey, Shoko, like, I done messed up, but also I just can't like you. And the reason why she can't like her is just because of, you know, the suicide incident with Shoya taking the fall, of, you know, her, you know, inadvertently and not her fault, but, you know, by extreme, you know, tenuous, extremely tenuously
if
ruined
you
their
weren't going to
friendships.
jump, then he wouldn't have tried to save you and gotten hurt doing it, Shoko. You're always thinking about yourself. You're so selfish.
Like, I get the idea of having this grudge, and you know, if Ueno, like, held that grudge, but also,
Like, yeah,
like,
it's flawed
acknowledged
sociopath
its
logic.
irrationality. It's not no, I don't agree with that. I hard disagree, actually. It's not flawed sociopath logic. It's irrational grudge logic. It's something that, like, I think the way it should have been portrayed and what should have been hammered home is that Ueno feels this grudge irrationally. And I think that is what they're getting towards. It's this idea of, I can't like you even though I know I'm wrong to hate you. And if it had hammered that home a bit more and had that turning point, Shoko standing outside the hospital for days on end, like, would have been a powerful image.
I mean, I think it's
But
still a powerful
it doesn't
image of
do that.
Shoko. It's definitely more a power move on Shoko's end than Naoka's end, because what it means for Shoko is that she's like, hey, you've been nothing but a cunt to me this entire movie, all my life, and you know, you're always like getting on me for saying everything is my fault, that I will just like shut down and like run away from all my problems instead of facing them. You're one of my problems, so I'm gonna face you every day until you acknowledge me.
Yeah, but I also think it gets a little too close of, like, a bit too close to killing with kindness that which shouldn't be given kindness.
Oh yeah,
Where Ueno,
well, that's what makes it kind of powerful. It's like, yeah, she doesn't deserve any. She, like, Shoko does not need to give Naoka the fucking time of day, but like it's like, given everything that's happened, like it's more of like a test for like herself and also for Shoya.
yeah, I mean, I get it on that end, but once again, misplaced scene, I guess, is how
I
would
wouldn't call it
describe
misplaced.
still.
I still, and I know you agree with me on this, that Naoka deserved, like, to get some sort of scene where, like, she gets brought down to earth. Like, even at the end, like, she's still shown hanging around Shoko and the gang, being like, yeah, I'm still, like, I'm one of the gang, right? Even though I'm still gonna be a little mean to Shoko.
I guess, yeah, like, the fact that her redemption is calling her an idiot in sign language doesn't really, it doesn't
see, I like
clock.
that scene in a vacuum. But like, once again, if she had a moment where someone just like brought her down to earth and be like, hey, you like owe Shoko like an apology, and you need to like be nicer to her. Like, if there was any moment like that where someone like talks some sense into that bitch, and then she's still like, oh, are you still like apologizing for everything? Like, you're still after all this, you're still like this emotionally stunted little girl. Oh, you moron. But then I love the scene where she signs moron in sign language, and then everyone else is like, oh my god, like now you haven't changed at all. But then Shoko's like, oh my god, you signed to me. You did moron, and like, because Shoko is interpreting that as like, oh my god, you actually, like, despite all of your caring or all this talk of like how you don't care and you don't want anything to do with me, the fact that you took the time out of your life to learn moron and sign, and then you signed it to me in order to communicate with me in a way that only I can, that means you care at least a little bit.
Yeah, like, I enjoy the scene itself in a vacuum, but I think we both agree it needed a little more oomph. The entire arc with Ueno, really, it needed a bit more development. A part where she, like you said,
if it were me, I would have had Yuzuru read her the riot act.
Fair.
Also, maybe Miki gets like more than just I'm sorry as well. Miki is Kawaii, like by the way.
Yeah, I feel like stuff like that happens in the manga, if I had to guess.
I'm willing to bet
because
that too.
The way people talk about it, I imagine the manga is like the very complete version of the story, whereas this is, the condensed, but at the same time has immaculate directing and visual storytelling that almost makes up for it version of the movie. No, I honestly
unless
wish it
someone
like
makes a version
longer
of the silent voice manga that has a little built-in MP3 player that plays the Who at the flashback sequence. Well, I guess it's up for contention, which is the superior format of a silent voice.
True. But like, yeah, even though this movie is long as shit, it also still feels like it should have been a tiny bit longer, honestly, just to have, because I wouldn't have minded. Like,
dude, those
I'm
2
down
hours
to sit
flew.
through this movie.
That did not feel like 2 hours. That shit flew by.
Dude, it was so much fun. It's like borderline inspiring because the movie is just so pro redemption, pro humanity, really pro the goodness in people. Even though people do awful things in the movie, and we get tense scenes of drama, at the same time, you get it. Like, you get what it's putting down. It's so heartening.
Here's a question I have for you, because this is a very popular emotional movie, a sad movie, a cry movie. Did you cry or at least like tear up a little bit at any point?
No.
I did not either.
It's emotional, but at the same time, I don't know. You know what it is? It's more like a slow burn emotion. There's
I
a
agree.
lot of slow burning.
I think what happens is that there's no like, if I could think of a movie like to compare it to, like Your Name and Weathering with You, like those have big emotional climaxes that they kind of like, not as a slow burn, but they definitely like build up throughout the course of the movie, and then like in a massive explosion of emotion. Whereas in this movie, it kind of feels like it's at an emotionally consistent high. And because like there are, not to say there are a lack of like big emotional moments in this movie, there definitely are. It's just the fact that there are so many happening not like too far apart, and like the emotions never feel like they simmer down to the point where it's like, okay, I feel like I've now completely come down from this emotional high. It's like a consistent like, instead of like big peaks and like low valleys, it's like a very consistent high part of the spectrum that it's in, where it never like hits the peaks of something like Your Name or Weathering with You on the emotional spectrum, but like it's high, consistently staying up there.
Yeah, I definitely agree, which is why I referred to it as an emotional pudding earlier in the podcast, which is a weird turn of phrase, but I think it's accurate. I think it's apt to compare that
is a good analogy
to watch this movie.
Also, food analogy. You're stealing my whole flow.
I didn't even realize I was stealing your whole flow. It's just the word that came to mind.
Oh yeah, that is a good way to put it. What would you say is if you didn't tear up at all? What would you say was your scene that like would have made you like the most, or like if you were to rewatch the movie again, you think would like could bring you as close as possible?
As close to tears, probably like at the very, like near the very end of the movie when Shoya, gets out of the hospital still wearing the gown, and Shoko's on the bridge just in like, crying over like what she feels she's done to Shoya and how she, almost inadvertently, made him die. Like, just coming to terms with that, and then they get on the bridge. Shoya's like, listen, from this point onward, bro, like we making right schmoves. We're gonna pick ourselves back up. We're doing the correct schmoovin'. And I feel like that would get me close. It's not the emotional. It's not the most emotional part of the film to me. It's the one that would get me closest to crying. The other emotional high point, which you know what I'm talking about just by saying that, that one's more of a deep horror type of feeling, a deep dread and horror. But that wouldn't be like tears for me, at least.
Oh, is it Shoko's suicide?
Yes.
Or attempted suicide? Yeah.
Yeah, dude, the cinematography for that went so hard, but I know you want to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Definitely not a like sad scene like, oh, I'm gonna cry. The sad scene like, no, please, like Shoko, don't. Every time you rewatch the movie, it's one of those things like it's gonna happen, but you want to pray so desperately that like fate, like the hands of fate, just change the content of the movie. Where it's like, actually, Shoko did not decide to jump, and therefore Shoyu did not have to get put into a coma trying to save her.
Dude, oh god, I can't.
It's like the scene
the
scene in Interstellar where the astronaut dude sees his daughter like and like, no, don't let me leave, Merv. And like, you like, don't jump, Shoko, please. But it's all in vain because they can't hear.
Like, okay, so first of all, the walk to the hotel room, not the hotel room, the apartment room. Why did I say hotel? But like, the walk to it, like, almost reminded me of the opening scene in Kizumonogatari, of like just slowly, walking up the stairs with the rigid architecture of the building. This like, it's cast at night, enters the apartment, like trips on his way to try and save Shoko. Oh, dude, and then, like, so much about the scene is so good.
And then the fake out of like how that trip might have caused
falling, dude.
And added on to the fact that she's deaf, so she didn't hear him come in, or maybe even scream her name.
Dude, and like after the curtain falls, like it takes a while for it to confirm what has happened, because there's fire, like it shows the fireworks going on very blurred out, like almost as if they're a trance, as if they're, not even there, not even real, just a set piece so far away in the distance compared to the emotions of the situation. It just lets you sit on that. Like, it's so good. There's so much goodness here.
And they compound it with the thing of like, Shoko realizes that she's been saved, and then after a while of like her hanging down, they Shoya's praying to God in real time, and like, please give me an ounce of strength, and I'll always look people in the eye. I'll never do bad again. I'll always deal with people earnestly, and I'll never hide my feelings again. Just please let me save her. And then like after a while, she's like willing to be saved, and she grabs onto the railing. Like isn't like never ask for Shoya to let her go, because like she is stunned that he's there, but then like she's like, okay, yeah, I probably also realizing that he's in danger too, because he's slipping off the railing as well. So she's like, okay, I need to get back up to save us both. But then he falls over trying to save her. And like, dude, imagine like the guilt of being like, I'm going to kill myself. But then a friend of mine, a person that I care about deeply, has saved me. But in doing so, has now hurt themselves to the point where they could also be dead. Like, imagine like the guilt.
The moment that he fell was probably like the single worst moment of Shoko's life. Like, honestly.
Like,
Like,
imagine like
that
if
would
you're
hurt.
Shoko at that point, do you jump again, or are you just like
Do
so
you jump
racked with
again?
guilt? I mean like if you're Shoko and you already like a minute ago had your mind set on killing yourself, and now you're the person that you love who just saved you has now like hurt himself, like he is bleeding out, has fallen several stories, is like do you, like what do you do in that situation? Do you like go through with it again, or because now you have like double the blame and guilt, or like or do you just shoulder on living and now live with the guilt of, oh my god, I was gonna kill myself, my best friend saved me, but now they could be dead because of my selfishness.
Yeah, it's a really it's
Also,
such a
now I have to
good like
face my family
emotional
again, who I was
climax.
planning on never like seeing again, and after I have to tell them that I was going to kill myself and like all of that was gonna happen. Yeah, because like yeah, with Shoya in the hospital in a coma, she has to be the one to explain what happened to him and tell her family, her mom and her little sister, so I was gonna jump and end my existence and leave my little sister without a sibling after our grandmother just died, and also leave my mother without one of her children that she's going to outlive. So yeah, that's crazy. This is awkward.
This is awkward. And something I love about this movie is that you understand why Shoko is doing this, like without the movie ever needing to outline it in explicit terms. Like we never get an I'm super depresso espresso man. Shoya, this is just tearing me up inside. I feel so useless, man. You just kind of get that. You understand it because it's like also a very gradual buildup of okay, she okay, well, it starts off she's already in a rough state, and it's confirmed later that she was already talking about like, "Hey, I want to die. Like, I hate living." And so this was already the state she was in. And then Shoya comes back, and it's like this happiness in her life of like, "Oh, I'm in love with him. I've made amends." And then, but then Ueno, the cunt, comes back and is like, "Actually, like." This guy you love, his entire social life was ruined because of you. Like he was having a rough time. It's all your fault, man. Fuck you. And then, her grandma dies. Like you
Their
get
friend group
why
falls
it's
apart
now
because
specifically.
yeah,
Yeah.
their friend group falls apart because they find out about Shoya's past, and Shoko blames herself because she's like, "Oh man, if I wasn't such a burden, like you would still have friends because you're such a nice guy after all this time, and I love you, but now all this has come back, and I blame myself because if I weren't just such a a deaf bitch, then this wouldn't have happened." Which should not be
Dude,
the
the
way
scene
that she should be thinking at all. But you can't help but feel like, no, Shoko, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault.
dude, like it's so subtle with it, but like the strength of this movie's directing and writing is that you get so much while the movie says so little. Because like there's a scene of Shoko trying to speak. Like she refuses to use sign language and insists on, okay, I'm gonna say everything. And the Shoya's like, Ayo, like this is sign language. I know it. We can speak in this way. Like you immediately get where she's coming from of like, oh, she wants to stop feeling useless. Like it's so clever.
Yeah, it's like so many little moments like that.
Like there's a lot of turbulence to this movie. In terms of the emotions. Like Shoya, it's not just a gradual redemption, it's okay, we've got our friend group back. No, we see, and this is actually a really good bit of directing where they're at the amusement park and we get the montage. Like, am I allowed to have this much fun? And then we slowly thread Ueno in, and like the X falls off her face, but you just get this sense of dread of like, wait, she's the odd one out. Hold on. There's something amok here. Something awry. Something's about to go wrong. If she's in the picture, something can't be going right soon. And
Yeah,
like,
that
and like the up and down of Shoya's emotional state of then he like the scene of him shutting out every other person in his life, shutting out even Nagatsuka, and then the eventual clamber back from that. Just so many complicated emotions in this movie, through its runtime that would be interesting to see in manga form just because they would be so much more fleshed out.
yeah, like uh then after Shoko and Yuzuru's grandmother dies, he and this is after like the big falling out with the group as well. He just spends like all his free time with Shoko and his sister to make them feel better. But with the dialogue and the way he speaks, it comes off like he's clearly being desperate to hang out with them, and like is has nothing else to do, but like just wants to just spend time with them, make them feel better. Like he's
Dude,
coming
what I
off as
like
like
about
trying way
that,
too hard.
because speaking of ReZero, there's a scene just like that in season 1. But fucking it's okay, the way it's shown, like immediate like at first, like it's shortly after the scene where he just shuts out everyone else from his life except for Yuzuru and Shoko, and he's in a fetal position in his room, like, I don't feel like I can ever fix this. Like, he feels like he's fighting this uphill battle and it's just not working out. He is like nearing his lowest point again. And then it's immediately juxtaposed by him literally stating out loud while he's hanging out with them, "Man, this is so much fun. This sure is dandy." And it's like that juxtaposition is so, emotionally interesting. It's visceral. I love this movie.
Yeah, I know. Uh, going back to the Shoko suicide thing, this does lead to another problem that which is a real one that holds me back from giving this movie a 10 and is probably addressed in the manga. I didn't piece this together at first, and I had to like look it up to confirm it. Man, granted, I may have just missed it the first time, and it might have been my fault, but I just assumed that the ambulance, like regular old ambulance and hospital people came to get Shoya out of the river after he fell in. Apparently, it was his childhood friends when he was a little kid, Kazuki and the fat one, the fat one from when he was a friend, not Nagatsuka.
What was confusing about it?
Why?
I mean,
Why were they
it
there?
is it's a very convenient coincidence, I will admit. And this movie does have,
I can kind
why
of
is
buy that it was Kazuki, because we do see him one time after when he was a kid, after the kid flashback sequence where Naoka takes him to a food stand where he works at the theme park, and him seeing him again, Shoya seeing him again when he was the one who kind of orchestrated all of the middle school bullying of him and like made him like the bottom of the societal ladder in middle school. Like him seeing that like makes him get all self-conscious again and being like, oh no, I feel like, do I really deserve all this happiness and all this good fortune and all these friends when I was such a piece of shit, and this guy made me like the biggest piece of shit of them all.
Oh yeah, the scene when he first sees him, and it like completely wrecks his mood. And it's like, he's horrified at like seeing him again for the first time in years.
But
That
then
was
we
great.
never
And the fact that
we
Ueno
never see
orchestrated the entire thing.
yeah, yeah, that's great. We never see the other one though, the chubby one. Like he was just happened to be there with Kazuki, pulling him out of the river when he falls in. Why? Why were they there? Why were they around Shoko's place?
I don't know why the Admittedly, this is yet another problem with the movie, which is that it's trying to just resolve all the arcs very quickly near the end, because the movie's gone on too long. We need to get this show off the road.
If I were to guess, I would say that this is probably has something to do with the manga, where maybe these characters were more fleshed out in the manga, and maybe they did happen to be around Shoko's place at the time, and maybe they were trying to, I don't know, maybe they knew that Shoya frequented her place and were trying to, like, maybe they tried to go to his place, he wasn't there, they tried to go to her place, find out where he is so they could, like, apologize or talk again, or maybe they were gonna apologize to Shoko, I don't know. The fact that they're there and the film in by itself gives no real explanation, it just kind of felt like oh, isn't that convenient? That it kind of felt like the one time we were hammering in the theme of, like, hey, redemption, former friends, guilt. Do you get it?
Yeah. Although, you want to know my biggest problem with the with the film, right? This is the actual big issue, right? Everything else we've said so far doesn't matter compared to this. All right, I'm gonna get real close to my mic for it. Why don't they kiss?
I did kind of feel that way. I am a little bummed, but it's not the point of the movie. Like, their romance is...
Look, I get that it's not the point of the movie.
Would it have made the movie better? Yeah, but I feel like in a superficial way.
I don't think it's entirely superficial. Because although it's not strictly the point of the movie, it is very much a subplot within it that just isn't resolved by the end.
I will say, in your defense, that Shoko does straight up say out loud that she's in love with him, and
there's
does
a
try to
confession
confess to him
scene,
at one
yeah.
point. And he does express it when he talks to Yuzuru. He does express interest in going out with her, and I think he basically does kind of ask her out in the final scene on the bridge before the end of the movie.
Like, it gets close to it, but it feels like it's just barely sidestepping like the obvious
for
romance.
Everything that's happened in the movie, given the context, I feel like that's, like, the best confession scene this movie could give us, just shy of them kissing. Because,
I disagree.
It's not about the romance. It's like their relationship
but
is more...
But it would have been satisfying.
It would have been pretty satisfying,
happy.
but I don't think it not happening is not a knock against the movie.
I think it is a knock against the movie. I think they should have kissed at the very end, and it would have been the best, most beautiful thing ever. You can't convince me down from this hill I'm standing on. I will get shot 1,000 times here, and I'll still be there.
I will get
as a ghost
on this
screaming
hill.
that they should have kissed.
I don't agree. I'm trying to think of another movie that happens with it. Like, it's like stuff like in Weathering with You, or like the romance bond is like, it goes beyond them kissing. Like, they're already sleeping in the same bed together. They've already like said that they want to get married. They
hold on.
Each other.
Fuck you. You complained about them not kissing in Weathering with You. I don't want to hear that as an example, because it was also a problem in that movie, and it's a problem in this one. Like, both of them should have had kiss scenes.
Okay, Weathering with You definitely more so than Silent Voice. Actually, now that
I'll agree that it's more so, but dude, a Silent Voice.
Okay, actually, you know what? I think I got my wires crossed in my head. Your Name was the movie I should have said, where they didn't need to kiss.
Yeah, I guess it's not as big of a deal in Your Name, because, like, well, in Your Name, oh god, voice crack. In Your Name, like, them seeing each other at the very end just basically implies the whole future relationship. Like, it wouldn't make sense for them to kiss at that point.
And if we are to believe the Shinkai verse, them showing up in Weathering with You does, well, I don't know if ever implied that they got together, but does imply that that what they did in fact cross paths.
But I'm still not backing down from this hill, Neon. You don't understand. I need the kiss. They need to smooch. They need to give each other a little peck. It'd be kinography, Neon.
it would have been nice, but given especially what happened in the movie with them, with both of them, either about to kill themselves or was going to kill themselves, I thought it would have been a little disingenuous for them to kiss so soon after.
Well, not so soon after. That would have been tone destroying.
If they
But
kissed
come
on
on,
the
at
bridge
some
scene, I'd
point-
been like, they kissed. Well, at the only some point after the bridge scene, like if they kissed on the bridge, that would have felt disingenuous because like, oh, you're out of your coma, I can kiss you now. That would have felt disingenuous. And then the only other scene after is when they're at the school festival and they like made up with all their friends. Like if they kiss there, there's no appropriate time for that. Besides, we don't need that because we have an equally emotionally gratifying moment of him finally looking people in the eye and allowing himself to like see like all the X's fall off of all the people around him, and he's like, oh my god, like I don't feel like guilt anymore, I don't feel like I need to avoid all these people, I feel like I belong now. And he starts tearing up and crying right there in the middle of the festival with the music swelling and thinking about all his friends he's made along the way. That is the emotional gratification, Crunchy.
Look, it is emotional gratification. And, like, I'm being facetious when I say it's the biggest problem with the movie. I'd say Ueno and some of the side characters, like, not being all that well developed is a genuinely bigger problem. But I'm still on the hill, Neon. You've shot me 50 times and I'm still standing. I'm never backing down, Neon. They should have kissed. You should have found some way to make it work, damn it.
I disagree. Yeah, and with that, I think I've gone through all the broad strokes of my notes, or at least everything I've wanted to talk about the movie with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking through my notes. Oh, you want to know? This is just a really petty side thing to do with the bridge scene. They shouldn't have kissed on the bridge scene, but they should have hugged it the fuck out.
Okay, yeah, they definitely should have hugged. They definitely should have hugged. I'll concede you that one.
The bridge scene, like, yeah, I'll admit, kiss scene on the bridge would have been tone destroying. Hug scene would have been tonally appropriate. Hug scene would have fed me, watered my crops, fed my family, kept the sun shining, like, for years to come.
I'll definitely big agree on that one. Also, real quick, we just want to mention Shoko's mom. Love her. Little, once again, minor character does get her own arc. Starts off at the movie, dislikes Shoya, slaps him when he finds out he was hanging around Shoko and her little sister. But then they have him over on her mom's birthday to be like, hey, help us bake our mom's cake. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, you have to bake a cake with this woman and not die. And then when Shoko's mom comes home, she's like, what is this guy doing here? And she's like, and then Yuzu's like, hey, come on, mom, it's a party, everyone's supposed to be happy. And then as they hang out, like, she becomes more and more okay with them. Yuzu's even like joking, like, hey, you're in luck, she's not gonna kill you after all. And then even to the point where like she's okay with him hanging out at the fireworks festival and has been like a good influence on Shoko and her little sister. And even to the point where she apologizes to Shoya's mom when she at the hospital when she shows up, and she's like, please forgive me for everything that I've said and done to your son. And like she's like doing even in like the Japanese way of like down on your knees, head bowed, hands like bowing at the feet, like, please like forgive me. So it's so
straight
powerful.
Up prostrating.
Yeah, and Yuzuru does it too, and Shoya's mom is like begging them for them to like stand back up, and she's getting emotional over it.
Yeah,
this movie's awesome.
Dude, it's a dense movie, and this is so random, but I found it in my notes, and now I have to mention it. There's a scene where Yuzuru texts Shoya, massive outbreak of carp today. not certain how many people will come feed them. Be there. And I just love the massive outbreak of carp. Just an excuse to get him on the bridge talking to Shoko. Dude, I love it.
Yeah, this movie's great. So I feel like we can end the podcast with the big question. The big 2016 anime film rivalry. Is this movie better than Your Name?
You know, no, of course not. Your Name is way worse. I mean, it's good, but it's not nearly as good. Like,
yeah,
that's
your
not
name,
even a question.
It's kind of not a contest.
If
I will say Your Name
all right,
hits
listen,
bigger emotional highs. It hits bigger emotional highs,
doesn't.
but like, I feel like the big scene of the meteor hitting, and also the big scene of them meeting on top of the mountain, and then her dropping the pen. I think that hits me harder than any one moment in A Silent Voice, and maybe even also when she falls off the bike, opens her hand to because she's forgetting his name, Taki's name, and then Mitsuha opens her hand, and then instead of writing his name, he just wrote "I love you." I felt like that was pretty strong too.
It has strong emotions, but like,
but overall,
this movie made me
Voice
feel so
it.
much more just because it has the solid structure on top of it. You know, Your Name was filled with plot holes, and I didn't care about Taki that much as a character. Mitsuha I liked, but Taki not so much. The one, like I said, plot holes. Now, the structure of that movie is Swiss cheese. It's just got like a bunch of icing and sundaes on top of it, and cherries galore. It's very pretty and hits. It's emotional, but but by compare, I'm using another fucking food analogy. But if Your Name is like a piddly little cupcake with way too much icing and ice cream and whatever on top and cherries, and like the actual cupcake is like, it has holes in it and is falling apart, A Silent Voice is the whole ass cake, and it looks beautiful, and you just want to eat it. That's my food analogy, my second one for the day. And it's no contest.
It is in fact no contest in terms of overall quality. But now let me throw you a curveball. Is it better than Weathering with You?
I'd unironically, I thought about this already, because that was the first thing that came to mind after I finished it was, all right,
because we both gave Weathering with
You,
and we both give this movie
and I also
a 9,
give this movie a 9.
But now, like, to what degree of a 9 is it better?
I think it's better, and my justification for that is that although I think Weathering with You has less obvious flaws in it, I think A Silent Voice just comes so much closer to being a masterpiece, where its strengths are so overwhelmingly strong. It's so good at capturing its appeals that it's like so actively painful that it's not a 10. Like, those obvious flaws in A Silent Voice, make it a 9, but it's like, it's a 9 you wince at. It's a 9 you go, ugh, I don't like putting that number down, because it got so close to a 10. Weathering with You, I still, it's still getting up there closer to a 10, but it's not like, oh, this physically pains me that it's a 9. Weathering with You is just like, yeah, it's a 9. It's really good. It's, one of my favorite movies. I really liked that movie. I would recommend it to all my friends day and night. It's really emotional and really powerful, and I love the characters. But at the end of the day, it's not quite as close to being absolutely masterful, and I think the directing in this movie also is just stronger. Even though both are very well directed, this one is just, every image in it is powerful. I want every image from this movie seared into my brain directly. Like that would be the point of a rewatch, is I want to commit every image of it to memory. Whereas with Weathering with You, I don't feel nearly as compelled to do that, even though it is still beautiful and very well directed. So that's my stance on this comparison.
I think I prefer Weathering with You a smidge more, and I feel like it has nothing to do with a silent voice. I think it just has more to do with I love how provocative Weathering with You is with its message. I mean, also, it's a tough contest for any movie, considering that Weathering with You has one of my favorite endings in, like, not just film, but all of, like, any media ever.
Oh, it's so good. Dude, I love Weathering with You to bits. It's so good.
Yeah, I feel like similarly to A Silent Voice, Weathering with You does hit well, actually, like, cuz like the big emotional moment that never two emotional moments that never get me to never failed to get me like, oh, this hits every time is the big moment where they clasp hands as they're falling, and the music swells at the perfect time, and then of course the ending where sees that she's been waiting for him this whole time, and like he like after everything that the choice that they made, like this is the choice that they ended up making. As you can construe it as selfish, but you know what, like the fact that like the film is taking such a bold stance on yeah, personal happiness, like is it so wrong to come at like such a like cost like this? Yeah, like just like the fact that it's willing to take the stance is like interesting. Whereas this film, it's definitely like the end. Not to take away anything from the ending, because the ending of this movie is also very powerful, and the story of redemption is very moving and touching to the soul. I just feel like, and I'm not saying this to knock the movie, it's a very I can't say it without coming off as a dick after sucking the movie off this whole time, but like safe, predictable, yeah, you get where I'm coming from, right? Like, you know, like this is like, oh yeah, the redemption movie with these characters ends in redemption. It's like it's executed all like to a near perfect state, but I just like the daringness of Weathering with You just a smidge more.
I get what I'm picking up what you're putting down. I even still, the word safe and predictable made me like physically.
It hurts. Yeah, I'm definitely not choosing the right words here. Like you get what I'm trying to say though, right?
Yeah, I guess it would be
expected.
That it's not safe and predictable.
Expected. I think is a better word. Like yeah, I expected A Silent Voice to end the way it did. I did not expect Weathering with You to end the way it did.
Yeah, I get what where you're coming from. I still prefer A Silent Voice just a smidge. These two movies are so good. Like, I will never get the people who think Weathering with You is worse than Your Name. Those people are insane.
Yeah.
And I'll especially never get the people who think that Your Name is better than A Silent Voice, because that's just... No, I know they're not really comparable, but what are you doing? Why is this your taste?
Speaking of taste, if you want to keep up with our objectively correct taste registered trademark, then be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Let us know down in the comments what you think of A Silent Voice, what you think of the podcast, what we should cover in the future. Subscribe to Crunchy's channel, follow all our socials, linked down below. We've done it. We're now 100 episodes into Castaway Anime.
At long last, it's been... how many, like 3 years almost since we've started this podcast. And
yeah, come late August, it'll have been 3 years. We've got the summer 2024 seasonal cast coming next week. We've got some big guests, the biggest guests we've gotten so far. So get excited for that. We're going to cover all the big new shows of the next season. Suicide Squad Isekai, Nokotan, and I think that's it. The next season. So get excited for that. And after that, after hitting episode 100, we've got a couple big things planned for the podcast. Big, pretty radical changes that we don't want to give away quite yet, but we think that you're gonna like it. So if you want to keep up with that, then be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode of the Castaway Anime podcast. And with that, that'll do her for this episode, the 100th episode of Castaway Anime. I'm Neon Manta.
The change is that we're becoming a vlogging channel. And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
Actually, we're gonna rent an RV, and we're gonna get a studio, and we're going to film in person.
Exactly. And we're gonna travel the US and get really
We're gonna
high.
hang up green and purple lights.
Bisexual lighting. We're gonna become leftist bread tubers and make 3-hour-long video essays.
Well, the green
Together.
and purple lights was in reference to content, but okay.
I'm trying to reference Digi, you're trying to reference content, and then I took it in a weird direction because I remembered bisexual lighting. But
hey, it's okay. In doing so, you looped it back around to Digi.
Exactly. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you 100 next times.